Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I am in transit, so we'll mostly be video down, audio down.
All right. All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get going, call this meeting to order. President Rivera is not going to be able to join us today, and Dr. Yarbrough said he would be joining us closer to 5 p.m. earlier if his schedule allows for it. So we'll go ahead and get going. I had no questions related to the information only items, and I received no questions from anyone else. So we'll move on into the abstracts. The first one is school readiness grant. Ms. Diaz-Valencia.
Hello, good afternoon, no, good evening, good afternoon. The 3.1 New Haven School Readiness Grant, in the amount for $9 million and change is for the school readiness priority, general funding that comes from the State Office of Early Childhood. We are the fiscal pass-through for this money and for this grant. And so all of the private providers within the city of New Haven, which include 27 school readiness providers, 923 children, have separate agreements that attach to this abstract and this grant funding.
All right, thank you. And yeah, just as a reminder to anybody viewing that this encompasses, as you mentioned, all the school readiness things, and the Early Childhood Council selects vendors based on their criteria and where to pass through. So, and I think we have several related items further down in the agreement section. So we'll move on to 3.2, which is the School Readiness Quality Enhancement Grant. And
so the piece is, yes, me again. So School Readiness Quality Enhancement Grant is really funding another funding stream that comes down from the Office of Early Childhood. Again, at the state level, we are the fiscal agent for that. The way that these funds are expended really has to do with the New Haven Early Childhood Council and their vote in ways to support children and families in the private family daycare centers and or the centers that we have here in New Haven Public Schools. Usually this is for professional learning and any other types of services for teachers.
all right, thank you. I had no other questions and received none from anyone. So let's move into the purchase orders. The first one is 4.1, purchase order with Mutual Link. Mr. Simeon. Is he available?
Mr. Wilcox, I'm not sure, but I can address this purchase order. It was for a pilot project which was done early in the year. It's a program that allows PD, when there's an event at our schools, to plug into Board of Ed cameras and look at incidents going on live. When they arrive to the location, they have better information, tactical information. The project was a short project. It was valuable, but the person at PD is on leave, and we haven't had a chance to get together to decide whether or not to make this a long-term project. But the project does have value, but we just haven't had folks get together to decide what are the next steps. But the project did have some value of communication for PD and also for New Haven Public Schools.
All right, thank you. So it sounds like, as you're saying, it was useful. The district might want to move forward with something like this. And I guess
Yes,
this would be an update to our current things in place for emergency response systems.
yes.
Because I know we have extensive camera network and a variety of other things. And my understanding is that we have periodic testing of things with the New Haven Police
Mhm.
Department and the Fire Department. So is this going to enhance that if this goes forward?
Uh, yes, it will, Mr. Wilcox. I know when I was here from 2014 to 2018, we tried to get this project up and running, but we just did not have the capacity or the funding to do it.
Okay. And my second question is, so this is kind of dated. So this apparently happened January 1 to March 30,
Mhm.
and we're only seeing about it now
Well,
because
it
this is last fiscal year.
yeah, it was in last fiscal year, but folks were under the assumption there was it was a pallet and it was free. It's not free. So I was able to find the invoices and the history and bring it forward as a ratification so that we can pay the contractor.
Okay. So I'm guessing we're going to have some questions related to this, is just the nature of it, why it's coming so late. And
Mhm.
if there could just be a brief memo that
Okay,
outlined what the issue was, I would appreciate that. And if we had that, I'm happy to look at any drafts of it, but I just think we need something that captures what the issues were,
I
that
agree.
it's coming to us so late.
Mhm.
Um, all right, I had none others and received no others. So let's move on to 4.2, which is a purchase order with Curriculum Associates. Ms. Joyner?
Yes, sir. This is for it says site-based licenses, but the site-based licenses are part of it. It's actually the textbooks, the licenses, everything for our sixth through eighth grade program, which is the iReady curriculum program, which has already been board approved. We have the K-5 through a multi-year contract, so we don't have to come back every year for the K-5, but we do have to come back for the 6-8 since we decided to adopt that program 2 years ago. So these are for the resources for all of our sixth through eighth grade students for their iReady program.
All right, thank you. I had no further questions on this. Seems to make sense to me. So the next item is the memorandum of understanding, but I'm going to hold that until Dr. Yarborough joins us, just in case there's discussion or questions related to that. And so unless there's an objection, we'll move on to the agreements and drop back for the MOU. First agreement is 6.1 with, is it Cormier
Yes, that's
Consulting?
right. Cormier Consulting. Um, we began working with Cormier Consulting. Good evening, Mr. Wilcox. We began working with Cormier Consulting last year in an attempt to try to create sort of a more unified approach to lesson delivery here at Cross. Knowing that we have 140 plus teachers, we wanted to try to create a system by which the way in which the content was presented was somewhat more uniform, recognizing that strategies and techniques may vary depending on the student population. We knew there was a lot of research that clarity of lesson objective was helping a lot of our students. And this is work that continues that and also trains teacher leaders and assistant principals in being able to evaluate that. It's for 3 months. It's 8 different coaching sessions as well as some whole staff delivery that needs to be used, this funding source, by the end of December.
All right, and question I had on this is, do appreciate you providing the information on the impact that they've had at Cross last year, and we always like to see that. And it looks like, so we had an agreement with them last fiscal year, which was just over 46,000. This is about half or so. So I'm assuming, or should I assume that this is showing a reflection of progress towards not needing this consultant, that it's
Yeah,
there.
well, certainly there's definitely a reflection of progress. We would love to have another funding source to continue it. This is really probably would and ideally be a 2 to 3 year work in conjoining with the district's push to do a lot more classroom walkthroughs, utilizing the district's own work around literacy. So we'd love to be able to continue that. But right now, in terms of funding sources, this is the piece. We did see some good, strong results for it. We'd love to be able to draw that out some more, but right now this is the funding source we have.
Well, funding is tight this year, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That's all the questions that I had, or we didn't receive any others. So we'll go on to 6.2, which is an agreement with Southern for up to 10 non-certified staff training opportunities.
Yep.
Also, Mr.
Hi, oh,
Ms.
sorry.
Jackson, I'm sorry.
Sorry, yes, that's me. This is again our alternative route, one of our alternative routes for certification for special education teachers. We've been partnering with them for residency for our folks, again, primarily it's a pathway for our paraprofessionals to become full-time teachers of record. So again, essentially, this is paying for them for the master's and the certification, with the return for them becoming special education teachers in our district, obviously, which is a huge shortage area.
All right. And so the question I had on this is I think that these types of programs are great and very needed. I just was curious as to how staff are going to be notified about the opportunity.
Oh, so we do notify them. So in addition to our own paraprofessional trainings, even with our special education powers, we've notified the unions, it's notified in district emails and all. So it's a regular communication that we have, and then we send it out to principals as well. But
Okay, and my second question was, so this is for up to 10. Is the $80,000 a flat cost, or is it prorated if we only had 6 take advantage of this?
Yeah, it's prorated. Yep. And then there's one other correction with this too. It does say Alliance program. There's a memo that updates it is actually the IDEA who's paying for this. So I'll make sure that I know Mr. Mayo will update that as well. So that's not the Alliance program, it's actually IDEA funding.
Okay, so it's a change of the funding source, but not the amount.
No, I have.
Yep.
It's an email which I sent to you.
Okay.
Which I think I have.
All right.
I'm happy if they want me.
Okay, hearing nothing else or having nothing else on this one, thank you for that. And we'll move on to 6.3.
Yeah.
Agreement with Pathways Riverside.
Yep, that's a little misleading.
Somebody mute.
Someone.
Yeah. You know.
I think it's Elia.
Yeah, it looks like it's Attorney Alexiades that needs
Uh-oh.
to mute.
You know, they have input and I wouldn't.
Sorry, I'm here. I stepped away for a moment. What did I miss?
Oh,
It's just that you were not muted.
Oh,
We were hearing some extra noises. So
it was
thank
in
you.
the background. I thought I was muted. Sorry.
Yep. All right, 6.3, Ms. Jackson.
I know it's a little misleading with the title, but this is our program. So as we know that we have currently at the high school level, just our alternative school at Riverside, this is a program that we have with Pathways, enough to be able to provide alternative programming for up to 14 additional students. Again, really looking at with our one high school alternative program, sometimes there are, for safety reasons, where we need to separate kids. This gives us another opportunity to provide an alternative space for students at the high school level. And we've been working with them for the last couple of years.
All right, thank you. And couple or one or two things on this one that I had. So one is just from Ms. DeMayo or from whoever's keeping track of stuff that comes out of this meeting is the description needs to have the amount listed. It's listed in the documentation, but not in the
Descriptor.
As it typically is. And then the second thing is if you could just describe a little bit further the types of services that this vendor provides. What are the typical, what's a typical student that might?
Yep. So the service that they provide, again, for the students who are here in this particular program, these are students who the larger
high schools. These are students who at some point in time may not have been successful even at a place like Riverside. So they provide the higher staff, smaller student ratio, a lot more alternative programming as far as students and really being able to look at their school day. They do some vocational programming with the students, really looking at some of their academic supports, really looking at how they're working even with specialized special education teachers. We even have a former special education teacher who is actually here and retired from Riverside, who's actually servicing the students as well. So really just being able to provide them with more of a voc academic experience with a higher staff to student ratio. And then also with the counseling supports, again, the number of counseling supports that they have embedded within the program.
Okay. And so this continues to be a needed program, it sounds like.
It is certainly, if at some point in time we get funding outside of even the high school, even looking at middle school, trying to be able to create these own programs in district. We're not there yet, but I just want to put that out there. The district does have a desire to create such programs even within district. So outside of just having the one high school alternative programs, we definitely want to be able to create those experiences in-house within New Haven Public Schools. So we're searching everywhere we can to look at monies in order to be able to do so.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to, so 6.4 and 6.5 are related. Both are in agreement with Department of the Army for our OTC programs. Dr. Billy?
Good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing?
Doing
These
great.
agreements are for our JROTC instructors here at James Hill High School, who provide instruction around junior military cadets, drill team, and just overall has been a part of our programming here at the Hill House for the last past 20 years. So something that we're looking to continue. It's an engaging program. Our students definitely like to engage in it. It's something that often you have to find spots for sick kids because it overflows very quickly.
All right.
And I have to please drive as well.
So I appreciate having the information on the results they see in terms of students in the ROTC programs have better attendance, better grades, etc. Just, do you have a sense of how many students we have typically in the ROTC programs?
Typically, I'm over 100 students per year.
Over 100 students per year. Okay. And I'll just note that this is the one where both of these agreements where the Department of the Army pays half and the district pays the other half. So, all right. Thank you. So that was for both 6.4 with looks like Sergeant First Class Lisa Rodriguez, and with 6.5 with Major Kiernan Shippey. So thank you. Let's move on to 6.6, which is an agreement with the MATCH, the Manufacturing Technical Community Hub. Ms. Natalino or Ms. McCain? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Attorney Alexiadis?
Yes, I just had a question on the ROTC agreements because the cover memo checks off the box as exempt professionals, which is the box we use for independent contractor or vendor agreements. And my understanding is that these are not vendors, but actually employees whose salaries are subsidized by the government. So we're going to need an employment agreement, not an independent contractor agreement. I don't think that affects your approvals. I just wanted to just make that clear.
Okay, so functionally, is there something that needs to change today?
No, I don't believe so. And if there is a technical amendment to the documentation, I will address that offline before the board meeting.
Okay. So it sounds like if anything, it would just maybe be a different category or make it clear that it's some sort of employment agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it talks about salary in the description. So and there's been some confusion in the past, not at the moment, but confusion on the status. So we'll make sure it's clear.
Okay.
Just want to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So, I mean, my understanding is they're not employees of us.
No, they are.
They remain with the Department of Army.
No, I think they are our employees. I think that was the point.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
But they're not, they're our employees. They're in the schools. They're providing a form of training, but they're not teachers and not certified. Then they can't be, and we're not, we're barred by the terms of, Army procedures. We can't negotiate their contract. This is what's given to us by the government. So,
all right. So yeah, if we could get this clarified this week, that would be good, just so that it's accurate when the board votes on this. In the past, there's been great support for these programs, and I think that they work in a great outlet for some of our students. But
yes, and I recall that
we need to get it right.
One of our student board members was part of this program.
Very true.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. So, hearing nothing else on that, we now will move on to the agreement about match. So, Ms. Natalino or Mr. McCain?
Good afternoon. This is Bob McCain. We're really excited to move forward with the lab that's being built at Hill House currently. However, in our plan for advanced manufacturing, junior year and senior year are all about hands-on. And we have no facility within the district that allows us to do hands-on with any of the bench work that's required for this upcoming year. So we'd like to work with Match, which is currently in operations. They work with people who have graduated from schools or from high schools already. They train them in 6 weeks programs, and then they match them up to jobs in manufacturing. They've graciously allowed us to use their 2,500 square foot lab, all of their tools and machines for the block 4 of every single day where our kids will be there. They're also giving us one of their professionals who are trained in all of this that will be working directly with our teachers and showing them how to use the machines, what the tools are, which include just regular hands-on tools. It includes electric drills. It includes air compressor tools. It includes machinery like drill presses, things that kids would really need to be able to know to go into manufacturing. So we have this great opportunity to do this. The price of $83,000 is for the year for these people to be working directly with our teacher. Also included in this is training of all of our 3 manufacturing teachers throughout the entire year to also learn about bench work and how all of that works to increase their knowledge. So that's what this is for, to just continue our program until the Hill House facility is actually completed.
All right, thank you. You just answered my one question on this, which was, is this going to be, when the facility's completed, something that we're able to do in-house?
Once it's completed, we've been waiting for 3 years for it to be completed. So once it's completed, then we'll know. But we have to secure our kids for this. From this year, they move on to senior year, which is really all about CNC machines, which we currently have in storage that will be moving to Hill House. So this is a unique opportunity for us teachers to really learn about all the bench work tools that kids really need to know about.
Okay. So do you have an indication? Do you have an indication as to when the facility will be completed?
I hate to say that because we've been saying that for years about when it'd be completed. We're told maybe by the end of January, but we're not sure. It just seems this project continually gets delayed over and over again. So we wanted to make sure that the kids were taken care of this entire year, even if the Hill House facility gets completed sometime during the year, we would still have to do the complete setup of moving all of our tools in there. And additionally, we don't have some of the tools that they'd be using. We don't have the compressor units and the tools that go with that. We don't have the drill presses. We have all the CNC machines and the 3D printers. So we have kind of the next phase of that. So that's where we're at now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Aline, you had something you wanted to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wilcox. So as of right now, due to the scheduling currently, especially with the funding for our ARPESTR having to be liquefied by December 30th, that is the deadline. The deadline right now is December 1, barring any delays having to do with shipping of materials. So outside of that, we're looking to have the project done by December 1st.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, we'll move on to 6.7, which is an agreement with Boy Scouts of America. Mr. Tabares?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Wilcox. So this opportunity with the Boy Scouts is to provide our 21st century after school students an opportunity to engage in a family engagement event at during their scouting days. So there'll be two opportunities on September 21st and the 28th. And this is part of our plan of to the path of excellence, where we want to collaborate with high quality community-based partners who are providing just unique programming for our students, and also another campaign to increase attendance and community involvement with these individuals. So this will be open to 150 students and families. And then the second initiative to support Truman School, there's a STEM-based programming opportunity for during after-school hours over at Truman. So that will be 75 students per day that they'll be working with, and for a total of 40 days.
All right, thank you. And thank you for providing assessment data along with the information posted.
Yes, sir.
I had no questions, received none. So let's move on to 6.8, which is an agreement with Learn Regional Education Service Center. Mr. Foreman?
Good afternoon. Yes, so we're using Learn as they're providing professional development for our teachers for our writing across the curriculum portion of our Commissioners Network grant. So they're going to work with teachers on writing instruction, providing them with a toolkit that they will have afterwards to keep utilizing what they learned in the PD sessions.
All right, thank you. And so for things that are part of the Commissioners Network, these are things that were also approved by the state. If I remember correctly, you have to put forward your plan, and that's part of what the approval plan is. And okay, just want to make sure I remembered that correctly.
Oh, you're correct.
All right, well, let's move on to 6.9, agreement with Boundless Literacy.
Yes, so we had Boundless Literacy last year, but it was paid for through the reading department. So we're doing it this year. So it's a person that will be working in our building full time. She's trained in the Orton Gillingham method of teaching phonics and reading. So she'll be pulling small groups all day working with students. So we had, like I said, we had her last year, and it helped boost the scores of our younger learners. So we wanted to bring her back this year.
Okay, thank you. I had no questions on this. So we'll move on to 6.10, which is with Connecticut Children's Museum. Ms. Diaz-Valencia?
Yes, Mr. Wilcox, how do you want to handle? I have 6.10 through 6.33.
Yeah, so I think we can handle several of these as a group because a lot of them are just the agreement for the spaces.
Correct. The only two that aren't are 6.11 and 6.33, which go along with the quality enhancement abstract for coaching and on the ground supports for some of the sites.
So let's do 6, 11, and 12 separately, and then we'll probably treat the rest as a group.
Okay. So outside of 6.11 and 6.33, the rest of the agreements on here go along with the abstract that I presented shortly ago. We are the fiscal pass-through with the Office of Early Childhood for the School Readiness Priority Grant. These are the agreements that go out to each of the private providers for the number of seats that they are allocated to provide services for, as determined by the New Haven Early Childhood Council.
All right. And so that's all those 6.13 through 6.32, I think.
I think it's 6.32, yes.
Yes. All right. And those we see every year. So those are understood. So 6.11.
So 6.11 and I believe it's 6.33 are both agreements with 2 consultants that work with the school readiness sites on coaching. Those funds are from the quality enhancement abstract that was also presented earlier, that I was speaking about regarding professional learning and the on-the-ground support for teaching staff in these private school readiness sites.
Okay, and those are also selected by the Early Childhood Council. And we're
Correct.
passed through for those. And so I assume that's the same thing with 610, which I think is the last one of all these, which is the Connecticut Children's Museum. Is that
6, yes.
okay? All right, I see. Okay. Just making sure I'm going down the list, making sure there's not another something else snuck into all these in
I know,
terms
I
of
was trying to check
out of
myself.
order, nicely grouped together. I know sometimes that's difficult when things are coming in for Ms. DeMayam and others to do that, but this is convenient. Okay, thank you very much. I had no other questions on these. It's always nice when you see the list and it's like, oh, this is a long agenda, and then you go, oh wait,
They all
a lot of
belong
these
to
are-
Vanessa.
all these, yeah. So, okay, so we'll move on to amendments now. There is an amendment to the agreement with Clifford Beers. Mr. Tabarez?
Yes. So the amendment for Clifford Beers is to support another family engagement opportunity to support 300 families in total, 100 families per day, September 14th, 21st, and 28th, over at Camp Farnham. So this will be a full day camp experience with transportation and food included. And again, we're tying this into our path of excellence as a way to increase attendance and community involvement, and just to provide high quality programming by community collaborations.
Okay, thank you. And I also thank you for including the evaluation information for these. That's always helpful. I've only heard good things about Camp Farnham. I've never been there. I should get out there at some point. I had no other questions, received none, so we'll move on to contracts. 8.1 is with Tucker Mechanical. Mr. Aline?
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. This is an agreement with Tucker Mechanical for $350,000 for boiler repairs. It was procured through sealed bid. It is for the fiscal year FY 24 to 25 and is being funded through capital general improvements. Any questions?
All right, thank you. I did not have any questions and received none, so we'll go on to 8.2, which is a contract with Tasty Brands, LLC. Mr. Young.
Good afternoon. 6.2 with Tasty Brands. This is one of our grocery vendors that we are going to direct purchase from. So it just allows us to purchase additional items that will serve for our after-school snack and sub programs that will be starting later this year.
Okay, thank you. I had no questions, received none, so we'll move on to 8.3, which is a contract with Carbonella and DeSarbo. Mr. Young.
Okay. All right, Carbonella, they are our main produce vendor currently. This here contract is for our fresh fruit and vegetable program that we will be beginning in October. We will be serving 5 school sites. So this right here is a state-funded program that we work with. So we're just using this to provide funds for that program separately.
Okay, thank you. I had no questions, received none, so move on into change orders. There's a change order with Milestone Construction Services. Ms. Sterling.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. All right, I'm going to try and make this change order as easily understood as possible. All right, the first part of this change order with Milestone Construction Program, which the Milestone Program the Milestone Construction Project consisted of 2 projects, one for Wilbur Cross High School and the other one for James Hill House. due to some scope of the projects of the cross project in particular, that was not included in the original bids, and some timeline concerns that went along with those change orders that would have to be put in, along with funding that would need to support those change orders. A decision was made to not move forward with the Wilbur Cross portion of this project. As a result of that, we had to reduce the cost of the entire project as a total by the amount of the cross portion of the project. So the first part of this change order here is to reduce the project by a particular amount of money. I have a memo that describes all the stuff that is part of this entire thing here. And I know, Mr. Wilcox, you had a chance to review it. So we're looking at a total credit of $1,014,499 for not moving forward with the Wilbur Cross portion of the project. In addition to that, a portion of the project over at James Hill House, there was an electrical scope that was reduced. And the reason for that is the electrical runs were originally looked at as having to run through a long portion of the building with a large cost with installation of new lines. They were able to shorten that or reduce that scope by tapping into electricity in a different location. That provided a credit on that particular portion of the project of $124,965.97. Now, there are some small additions to the project for the James Hills House project as well. So the hallway floor needed to be done. A larger portion of the hallway floor needs to be done. And we're going to be looking at doing polished concrete inside the hallway instead of doing tile. That's an increase of $31,165.89. There was a drain that was clogged that they have to run into or tie into. So they had to have a contractor come out and clear that drain and tap into the soil line. That is $894.35. That is an increase of $894.35. In addition to that, there were some changes to the compressor room that were necessary, that were brought up by the architect. That created an increase of $26,764.83. What does that mean in total? It means that there's a total credit to this project of $1,139,464.97 and a total addition of $58,825.07, which creates a total credit after you subtract the additions from the credits of $1,080,639.90. So that is split up between two accounts. $880,693.90 will go back to our ARP-ESSER, and $200,000 will go back to the manufacturing pathway grant. I hope I made that as clear as possible. But overall, there's over $1 million of credit that is part of this change order, and that's what this change order is being submitted for.
Okay. Thank you for walking me through that.
Yes, sir.
So my question is related to the manufacturing space across. Is this a change? Like, this isn't going to happen now? Is this going to happen at all? And
that's a question that I can't answer.
Right. Dr. Brown is on the call, and or Dr. White?
Yes, due to just the construction constraints as well as planning and mapping out code, we just are not able to maintain the program floor. So we are not building there at all.
Okay. And so that's a major, so that seems like a big change, and so there might be some questions related to that. And I'm wondering if there could be, I'm guessing there's going to be questions as to what this means for the manufacturing program. This is something people have been wanting. Yes, Ms. Red-Hannes?
Yes, good afternoon. So we are still providing opportunities for those students at Cross that are part of the manufacturing program. One of the things that we were able to do was sync up bell schedules for Cross and Hill House this year in forward thinking, knowing that we were likely not to meet deadlines set by ARP ESSER funding to be able to create the manufacturing room. And so we've partnered with Match to provide opportunities for students at Cross to go to Match to still have the same experience that we promised them as well. So I think that's a key point that our community will be concerned about to make sure that those opportunities still exist for our students. So they do. And we'll still continue with the room at Hill House.
Okay. And then so the space that was going to be dedicated to this across will be repurposed for some other use?
It's currently the auto lab
Okay.
and still will function as such.
Okay. And did we expend a lot of funds working towards the manufacturing space there that we've lost money on this, or is it by zeroing this out, we haven't expended a lot of funds on this?
I'll leave that to Mr. Aline.
So based on my research, the money that went into this had to do with the design.
Okay.
Outside the design and anything involving an engineer, there wasn't any money spent on material or anything like that. We didn't break ground, no demo.
Okay. Dr. Negron?
Yes, Mr. Wilcox, I think Keisha Red-Hannon's mentioned the bulk of it. One of the other things that I wanted to add is that our commitment was to ensure that both the students at Cross and Hill House were still going to have access to the manufacturing program. So that is why, as has been mentioned, right, we made those arrangements with Match to ensure that we can continue to have our students participate as we built out the manufacturing lab over at Hill House. One of the things that I did learn upon my arrival last year was that it was going to have a significant impact on the auto shop program, which again has been longstanding, and it would have had negative impact to that programming. So I think there were lots of decisions that needed to be made, which you've heard articulated already by Assistant Superintendent and also a little bit by Supervisor McCain earlier. So it was a tough decision, but I think the best decision on how we can maintain both programs, manufacturing and auto shop, was while still giving our students the best experience that they need as they get into their juniors and senior years once we have the built out over at Hill House.
Okay. My recommendation would be a brief memo that just explains the educational impacts, the things that have been said here, or I suppose you could also just have somebody available to speak to this on Monday at the board meeting, because there'd probably be questions, and it might just be more efficient if there was a memo that just kind of described some of this.
And we're happy to include the letter. We make sure that we were communicating with their families. So we can definitely make the letter available that was being shared with the families of the students in the manufacturing pathway.
Okay, thank you. That sounds good. The only other thing I had on this one is that we've been asking that there's information about the percentage increase or decrease for change orders. And so if we could do that, there might be some questions I could imagine based on the scope additions, just in terms of what those would have been, understanding that the reduction in the reduced electrical scope pays for these additions, and then some. There still might be some questions as to what those things would have been. If I remember correctly, it was like $1 million project at Hill House as well. Is
that's correct?
The
Yes.
overall?
Yes, that's correct. So the cross project, according to the change order for the new contract, is basically $978,000, so just sub $1 million.
Okay, so if we could just have that information that just follow. I mean, typically there's increases, but there's also decreases, and so being able to just follow the same model would probably be a good thing.
So the change order document, Mr. Wilcox, does have the overall decrease, which is a 52% decrease. But just so I make sure I understand your ask, you want me to also have prepared the increase specific to Hill House, what that percentage is?
Yes, I'm looking at yes, just what the percentage is specific to the Hill House piece, because I'm looking at the memo now and I'm not seeing that information's there.
No, it's just on the change order document itself that the overall reduction percentage is on the top of page 2, line 13, but that's overall for the 2 projects, right? But if you want a specific for Hill House, I can carve that out and put it into the memo so it's prepared for board on next week.
I think that's good, especially because moving forward, the crosswork just isn't going to be happening. And so if there was other change orders related to the Hill House work, we would just be able to start compartmentalizing it into that piece of the scope.
Yes, sir, no problem.
All right, thank you. So I had nothing else on that. It is a little complicated, and I appreciate everyone walking me through, and it sounds like we'll have information available for the rest of the board. Now, I think we've covered all the action items with the exception of the memorandum of understanding. So let's go ahead and move back to that. So item 5.1, which is an MOU with City of New Haven for Assistant Corporation Counsel and a BOE labor and staff attorney. So Ms. Hannons, this is listed as? And I don't see her.
Good evening, everyone.
There we go.
With the MOU, there were a few questions which had to be answered by a couple of us in the department. But the main crux of the MOU I can talk about in terms of I think you had asked a question regarding the excuse me, my mind just went entirely blank. With the procurement coordinator, that was left off by mistake because Pat dealt with the 2 that belonged in her office, and the other one would come from budget and management and budget. So we need to have that rework done, even though the person is housed within the Board of Education offices, and also his salary is coming right out of the Board of Education budget. It's not coming out of the city budget. But just to continue as we did with the past, I will make sure that goes back into the MOU.
Okay, so you're saying there's going to be an additional MOU, or this one is going to be
another you just for the purchasing coordinator, because no funds will be changing hands. He's on the Board of Education, but he's on our payroll, but because it was a city job that was housed in the Department of Education, we'll just continue as we did in the past. As far as the legal, you had asked about the prorating, and yes, the original person only worked a week. There was no billing for his salary, and then when the second person gets hired, it will be prorated based on the date when that person gets hired.
Okay, and we should probably drop back and just provide the context for all of this. Is for the past several years, the Board of Ed has had an MOU with the City of New Haven to provide where corporation counsel office members, we pay for them. They're dedicated to board business. And this is an attempt to better coordinate with the city, because there's needs to do that, as well as to save some money with outside counsel, which is, can be $250 plus an hour, depending on who we're working with. So that's just the background of this. So this is I think the 4th year we've done this.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so if I understand it correctly, this is going to get changed to include the purchasing information about the purchasing agent, or is it not?
Well, at this point, since this one is basically ready to go, I can just have a separate one due for the, because there is a no cost there. As I said, the person is on the Board of Ed payroll, so we could just do that one as a separate MOU.
That sounds like the easiest thing to do, to kind of keep it clean because it's two different groups.
Correct.
Attorney Yadas?
Yeah, just to to concur with what Ms. Hannon said, believe that in prior last year, which was I think the first year that we had the purchasing person in the finance department, it was one MOU, but that included a budget allocation,
Right.
which won't be, I understand, won't be included this year. So it would make sense to split it out to two separate MOUs.
Okay.
And then I know that there were questions about the attorney MOU that I believe that Pat King addressed. And if there's any technical corrections that are needed before Monday's Board of Ed meeting, we can make those, although none jumped out at me. But I'm
Okay,
happy.
so I had several questions that I had sent on regarding which I've not seen answers to. So if there's
Okay.
if the has come in, it's come in relatively late. I'm not seeing that I've received any answers to those questions. So
Mr. Wilcox, I had a conversation with Pat King this afternoon, and so I had to send her the MOU so that she can take another look at it. There was the question regarding the something that was in the agreement before that wasn't in the agreement this time. So she said that she would take a look at it and she can put that back in if we want that back in. I guess it's an understanding, but she said if we want that statement put back in there, that we can do that.
okay, so yeah, so the questions that I had were the question related to that was the previous agreement had language about maintaining that the attorneys will attain attorney-client relationships consistent with the rules of professional conduct, and that was missing in this other one. My understanding is that that's just kind of part of the basis of things.
Yes.
But I just wanted to make sure as to the why.
Mm-hmm.
What are the implications of that? Dr. Negron, and then Attorney Alexiadis.
I think one of the questions you had also posed was around our involvement as it relates to the hiring process. And I wanted to state that, for example, there is that opportunity. I know that Lisa Flegler participates in that process. I know also last time I had an opportunity to also take a look at some of the candidates. So there is participation from the board side to be able to hear and meet potential candidates. The other piece that I did speak later this afternoon, that's why you haven't seen responses yet, with Attorney Alexiadis is the question around the supervision piece, because I would like to see something related to whether it be input or something like that, so that the superintendent plays a role in that as well.
Okay, Attorney Alexiadis.
So on the hiring participation, we can address that if there's a consensus that's something that's desirable, and I'll talk to Corporation Counsel Pat King about that. But I think that's just really is a question of documenting what our practice has been and should continue to be, as constrained by the charter, that the attorney needs to technically work for Corporation Counsel. Matt, Pat answered the questions directly to Linda Hannons at 4 o'clock, which is why you didn't get them, but we will we'll forward them to you. And as to the supervision, I'll address that with Pat and Dr. Negron offline. And I think it relates to a clause that was omitted, but is implicit, that the attorneys comply with the rules of protect, and the relationship is an attorney-client relationship governed by the rules of professional conduct. But if we need some language, either put back the old language or some additional language, let's address that. Let's address that offline with the view to having it done before Monday's board meeting. But I don't, probably not efficient to get into the weeds on that right now, on that aspect.
Okay, so yeah, my questions were related to, and we've talked about parts of this, but the superintendent's role in deciding what the attorneys will be working on, who's making some of those decisions, what happens if there's conflict or differences. So in the questions about who hires for the positions, so we've talked about some of that. I am still curious as to does the district or the board have a veto over a hire if the hire was not satisfactory to the district, understanding that we do have the right in this to terminate the agreement with 60-day notice. So I guess that's the final, if we were being forced to accept somebody that we didn't think was going to meet the needs, which I don't imagine that's going to happen, but it's what MOUs are for, is to clarify some of these things. And I know from discussions, there might be questions related to that. So having it clarified as to how that goes forward, I think would be useful.
Okay, yeah, because the ultimate hiring and firing decision is a function of corporation counsel. But what you're asking for is a slightly different question. So,
right. So it's
in terms of attorney-client relationships, unfortunately break down, from time to time, among all attorneys and all clients. So,
okay.
I think that's pretty much what you're talking about in terms of a veto on the hiring. We in our office here can't imagine hiring anyone over the objection of the superintendent and her staff. But we can try to address that language. And if the changes that we arrive at in the next couple of days are, if it's more than, if you think it needs to come back to the committee, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll take it straight to the board.
Okay. So I'm just thinking through the questions that I had. I think a lot of them are straightforward in terms of there just needs to be a little bit of language that just outlines that, because I know we're going to have questions about, particularly around hiring. I know we're going to have questions around, understanding that the Corporation Counsel's office is the supervisory administrative oversight, just making sure that it's clarified and so that everything works as smoothly as possible, particularly because the intention is to expand this, as it was last year, to have a second attorney dedicated to this. So I think clarifying it would be helpful. None of those things seem particularly, those seem to be important details, but details not the major parts of this, which are these two positions, and the salaries are listed. And I do also think it needs to just be clarified that it's prorated based on when a position is filled, if the position's currently empty. I think
I was just going to add that because I thought it was off my list.
So those are I think the major pieces. So I'm fine sending this forward, and I see Dr. Yarbrough's on here. I don't know if how much of this conversations he's heard. He might have his own questions, but I think those are understanding that if there's big snags, it can always be withdrawn before the meeting by the board or by the superintendent. So if there were big issues that remained. Dr. Yarbrough, I don't know if you had any questions related to the MOU or not. I'm not hearing you if you don't look like you're muted, but I'm not able to hear you if you're saying anything. All right. So Okay, so if anybody had any questions related to this, I think it would be good to get those questions in to the committee and to the superintendent as soon as possible, so that it can inform the draft of this. And the reminder that it's already Tuesday because of the holiday yesterday, so it's a little bit shorter week than typical. And I'm seeing a note from Dr. Yarbrough where he says that I think we've addressed the topics, has addressed any questions he had at this time. So, all right. Hearing nothing else on this, that was the end of the action items. So I move that we send to the full board with a recommendation to approve these two abstracts, these two purchase orders, this one MOU, these 33 agreements, one amendment, and 3 contracts, and 1 change order.
Second.
It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So we will move on in the agenda. And the next one is some reports. And the next one is our FY24 minority and woman-owned contractor update. So I think this is Mr. Carter and Ms. Snyder. And welcome, Ms. Snyder.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So the item is here because in the past we were able to have an update as to how the district was doing in terms of minority and women-owned contractors updates, and I was wondering if there was an update related to that for this year.
As I had discussed with Mr. Carter last week, in the past, the reports were done by the facilities management company. I sent him a copy of one that was done, and they would do one at the end of every fiscal year, going through all the purchase orders and all the contracts that were executed, who they were executed with, and the amount, and then MBE, WBE, New Haven. So I sent him a copy, and I think Mr. Carter then discussed it to see how long it would take the facilities management company to come up with that.
Thanks, Ms. Snyder. I'm working closely with Mr. Arlene and his staff to get that report done because it's very critical that we have that information. And Mr. Wilcox will probably have that for you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
I worked with Lil before on these reports over at the city, and that's something that we have to do and must do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can report that I work very closely with purchasing, and I've worked very closely, with the facilities management in making sure that the requirements of the minority and the small business participation are met on every single bid document. What we have is a process that that everything has to kind of go through my office. If a contract is put out and it's supposed to go only to our sheltered market MBE contractors, I immediately flag it, and purchasing will not execute a PO or a contract. Some do get by me, but sooner or later I catch them all. So sort of, I'm the enforcer of making sure that it's executed. And then a lot of times I would contact directly the department head or like in the past, the facilities management saying, look, what did you do here? You know that this was supposed to only go to the small minority contractors. Why did you select so-and-so, or what happened here? Because the process is, and I'll just take a couple of minutes because I know it's the end of the day. You've had a long agenda. The process is that they have to look, if it's a small contract, small meaning $150,000 and under, it has to be bid to our small minority contractors only. The big guys cannot bid on it. And we're the only entity in the state that has a sheltered market program like this. I'm very proud of what the alders did quite a while ago to enforce it. In fact, the state of Connecticut is concluding their disparity study, which is coming out next month, and they're recommending that the state have a sheltered market program like ours. So, but of course, as we all know, it's a pain in the neck. The department heads don't, the different, they come across a project and they know a vendor that they've worked with. They want to use the vendor that they know. And then along comes Lil and says, oh, no, you can't do that. You have to make sure that you offer it to our local small minority contractors first. And so it takes a little longer. Sometimes it costs a little more money, but that's what we want in New Haven. That's one of our goals. And so the reporting, the tracking, the monitoring is what my office does. And I'm sure all of you have heard, oh, Lil said we can't do this. Oh, she's delaying the project. And oh, it's taking so much longer because of Lil. But at the same time, I think we're all committed to the same goals. And in reaching your goals, sometimes it costs a little more and it takes a little longer. But at the end, it's a very productive outcome. And so if you have any questions, anytime, please feel free to reach out to me because I know at times in the past, as I told Mr. Carter a couple of weeks ago, every 2 years after election, I would schedule a meeting with your board to go over the program because a lot of times there's confusion as to what the program is. The program is a small MBE program. It's an MBE for our definition because of our communities. It's Black and brown. And then we have a section for women. And that's our focus because of the disparity study that we did and because that were the groups that were identified as being disadvantaged. So it's all those three. So sometimes a project will meet the requirements because they have 60% Hispanic contractors on the project. Some of our neighbors will get upset saying that, look, I didn't see a black face on this job. But the definition is MBE and it's a combination of the three. So, and I always stress that so that there's no misunderstanding as to what the legislation says, that what we're looking for on these projects. Anyone have any questions right now?
Yes, comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, thank you. And Ms. Snyder, thank you for your work. And I in particular requested that we have an update in the conversation. So thank you for joining us and you and Mr. Carter working together with Mr. Arlene on this for the future. My question is for do we as a board or even as a district, do we forecast for the MBEs, do we forecast what may be the possible contracts coming up for any given year? I'm just trying to think what heads up do people get for being able to apply for some of the contracts that we put out there? Do they have some months? Do they have 6 months?
Well, it's sort of a dual question because some of it depends on your facilities. If your facilities can forecast what they're going to be doing 6 months from now, my office has an email blast and we send directly to the email of every contractor that's registered in our program. It's not a legal notice in the paper that they have to read. It's not a notice in some, professional journal. It's an email directly to their inbox. So some of it depends on the project projections as to when they are coming available. And also how quickly purchasing gets it. Because as soon as purchasing gets it, I get it right away. and it's an email blast to everybody. Go on to OpenGov. This project is coming up. This is geared for you. Take a look at it. And I'm such a pain that I think I probably send it out 10 times saying, take a look at this. This is for the carpenters. My line is, I don't want anybody to see that they missed an opportunity. Because if they read their emails, they will know that the project is coming up. The state statute says that the minimum notice that we need to give is 10 days. We have always focused on making sure that it's a lot more than 10 days, but it all depends on when I get it.
Great. Thank you very much.
And just so that, all of you know, we do massive outreach to make sure that the community knows of what projects are coming up. We'll do the email blast directly to their inbox. We'll put it on my website, which is SCD, which has a whole link that says, here are all the jobs that are week by week. This is what's available this week. This is what's coming up for next week. And then we also do, when we see that on purchasing, that a lot of vendors, because sometimes we'll have projects that nobody even looks at. We'll do an email blast saying to all the carpenters, because I have the directory, online I have a directory, both by name and by trade. So if you're looking for a carpenter, you can go to my website and look at the directory and see all of the vendors that are listed as carpenters. And so if it happens to be a project where we're looking for a specific trade, an electrician, a carpenter or a plumber, I will then focus specifically because basically, we need to let everybody know about opportunities. But when it comes down to where that I see, here's one that no one has expressed interest, but I know that we have plumbers, I will target the plumbers and bombard them with phone calls and emails, saying, go on to OpenGov, take a look at this. And if you have any questions, give us a call.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Aline?
Thank you, Mr. McGraw. Lil, has there been any discussion with the small business vendors or those that are involved with the WNBE program about the new insurance requirements? As the New Haven Public School System, we're now required to have abuse and molestation insurance for anyone that's going to be on site where there's going to be children around, and it's causing quite a stir with the pool of vendors that we're trying to obtain or trying to sift through, specifically the small business vendors who many of them can't get the insurance because of their policies. Has there been any discussion with the city on how we're going to approach that with the MBE program?
It is a major deterrent we've met with the insurance facilities for the city, and we all understand the need for having it, but at the same time, it is a major deterrent for small businesses. The cost is prohibitive, and especially if they're going to only get, let's say, one job with the Board of Ed, and they have to get this insurance for the whole year, that's costing somewhere between $5,000 and $7,000. And then the background checks are extensive. And so we have a company like Emerge that deals specifically with reentry workers. Their whole focus is to allow reentry people to be able to work on some of these projects. They can't pass the background check. We have the smaller Hispanic companies that have recently their workers are new residents, they're new to the country, they can't pass the background check. So it is an issue for our contractors. And where Mr. Carter and I sit on a committee that's one that the mayor started in trying to come up with possible suggestions as to what we can do. Of course, the insurance entities are saying we have to cover the city. We have up to $5 million that comes out of the city's pocket every time we have a claim. And so it's a double-edged sword. But the insurance issue overall with the increase in the insurances that are required, that started in January of 24, has been a major concern to the small contractors. You know, their claim is that that New Haven's becoming anti-small business.
And
So
that
we're trying to work on it, right, Mr. Carter?
and that requirement is imposed by the city's insurance side of things, right?
Yes, yes.
I mean, obviously the board wants people properly insured, but the decision as to what the level of insurance is required, that's from the city, not the board.
Right, exactly, exactly. The city has a group, and uh, Elise, you can help me. The city has a group that they hired that kind of manage the insurance issues that come through the city. And they meet and determine, you know, what limits are necessary to cover our exposure. And then they kind of go out and market. I think we're self-insured, but we still have an entity that says, you know, here is what you really need to have in comparison to all the claims that you're currently having.
Okay. Attorney Alexios?
Yeah, we, meaning the city, which includes the Board of Ed, are self-insured up to a certain point before, and that level varies from time to time, from year to year, case by case, but above which then the insurance kicks in. But I wouldn't say that we're anti-small business, we're anti-child abuse. I mean,
Right. Oh, exactly. But, you know,
But I
try
would
to
say
tell that
that,
to the small contractor.
yeah. And in the past, the you know, the controller has, and I think that's the only one who has the authority to, it's either the controller or the budget director who has the authority to waive an insurance requirement. In the past, it's been a case by case decision based on the facts, the particular facts of the work being done. But that doesn't help you with guidance, you know,
Right.
forward or across the board. But the question is, what is the involvement with students and with children?
Yep.
You know, so some, you know, and I'll speak generally, but some outside vendors have access to the schools during school hours and you know and after hours. Others are, you know, might be checking a piece of equipment outside the building and not really have any, with no real prospect for interaction with the students. But those are things that we would be on alert for. And yes, there is an outside insurance consultant, you know, risk other city departments that are involved with risk management. It's not something that my office decides, but we advise. So we can, you know, continue to address that, but I don't.
It's a tough question. Because you all of a sudden you wouldn't want to be the entity that says, okay, we're going to waive it for the vendor that's cutting the grass, and then all of a sudden something happens.
Yeah. So, okay, so to summarize, it sounds like we're going to be getting this report maybe in 2 weeks, maybe in 4, depending on pulling it together. So I think I appreciate the overview and the discussion. Thank you, Ms. Snyder, for being here. And I mean, it sounds like that this isn't, as you've mentioned, it's an impediment to the purposes of the program. The insurance is kind of creating an issue now, but perhaps the alders can figure out a way to enhance it, maybe provide some grants to some folks to be able to bid competitively for this work in spite of the large insurance costs. So
Yeah, and that's something that we're looking into with purchasing, is saying that maybe if we can find a revenue stream, we might be able to say, okay, bid your normal cost, and then at the end of, as a extra, it's sort of like an add-on, put on the cost of the insurance so that you're not prohibited from being the low bidder. And then we, with a grant or some additional funding, pay the cost of that insurance. But those are all the things that we're exploring right now.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Yarbrough, did I see your hand again?
Yes, I was just thinking that I think on the board side, we determine the size of the contracts, and we can take some contracts and make them smaller so that businesses can have access to them. So perhaps we can make contracts such that it's worth the small business owners' cost of insurance. So if the insurance is costing them $5,000 or something, maybe we bundle some of the packages so that if they bid for them or get several of them, that they're able to make the insurance costs worth their investment.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's it's something that's going to take us a while to figure out because everyone understood the need for the insurance. And we need to protect the city and the taxpayers. And then we have to figure out how we also work to make it viable and doable for the small contractors.
All right, thank you. Mr. Arlene, you had your hand up?
Yes, just in response to Dr. Yarborough, sir. The issue that we're having right now, and we're going to have going forward, is that we do on-call contracts, right? So it means I call you for service, and you get paid for the service that I requested. If you obtain the insurance, and insurance is $7,000 for the year, there's no guarantee you're going to get business that even equates or surpasses that, right? And so that's where the cart before the horse comes in. We're requiring the insurance, they have to buy it without any guarantee of business, because an on-call contract is not a guarantee of business. And so that's one of the problems that it's creating, just so you understand. Even if we get multiple contracts, the way you do business in terms of service through the facilities department, that's going to be a problem going forward, and we haven't figured that out yet.
Understood. Thanks for that point.
All right, thank you. Let's see here. Hearing nothing else on this item. The next item was a facilities funding gap discussion. The background on this is that we, as everybody knows, starting, I think it was in March 2023, and then it was updated in March 2024, a staffing guidelines report that really just shows the gap between how many staff we should have and would have if we were equitably funded. If the state of Connecticut more equitably funded its schools, then we would maybe be able to afford to have enough social workers, school psychologists, librarians, math teachers, etc. So the question then comes up is what's the facilities funding gap? Because we know we have, I can't remember how much square footage of space spread out over 45 or so buildings. And we have a lot of challenges related to keeping up. We've had a previous CFO, as I recall, said something along the lines of he would spend as much in a year on 10 or 12 buildings, what we're spending on 45. Just more indications that we're severely underfunded and not able to maintain these buildings as they deserve to be maintained. So the purpose of having this on here is what would that kind of thing look like? And so I don't know if Mr. Carter or Mr. Aline, if you had some thoughts, but I wanted to create some space for this so that we could talk about what it would look like, because it's going to be useful moving forward to capital budget requests with the city's capital budget, and then also with the state biennial budget, where I imagine, are going to be trying to increase funding for public schools in Connecticut.
Thanks, Mr. Wilcox. I'll start and Mr. Arlene could jump in. I do know in the budget, there are 14 FTEs for tradespeople. And right now we're down to, we're only funded for 11. And I think of those 11, we have 2 out on workers' comp. We have 1 painter, we probably need 2. We have 2 carpenters, 3 electricians, and what's the other trade group I'm missing, Jamar?
You got your plumbers as well.
Yeah. And so Jamar and I have been working on trying to do a right sizing plan, knowing that we also have to do this RFP for facilities assessment. but we do need more in-house tradesmen. And based upon the age of the buildings and the number of work orders come in, Mr. Aline could speak more to that. But I do know, as an example, this weekend, I spent Friday with Principal Brown. I don't know if he's still on the call at Wilberforce. And we walked the hallways, looked at stairwells that need to be repainted. One painter can't do that. We have the stairwell covered trays that need to go on the steps, because that was one of the photos in the article. We got 5 stairwells, 60 steps per stairwell, and it's probably $100,000 to do the stairwells there. The doors, we have a carpenter, but if we have 50 fire doors that have to be checked and inspected as well as passed, we just do not have enough personnel to cover the amount of square footage and be able to deliver services timely. I know we're working now with the fire department. We meet weekly to address our fire systems, fire alarm, fire doors, but we just do not have the bench strength or the capacity to stay on track and be more proactive.
So just to caveat on what Mr. Carter provided so far, to give an example of the carpenters, right now we have 2 carpenters that are here. One is out on disability. The carpenters do everything from doors to locks to ceiling tiles that cannot be reached by the building managers, floor tiles. They board up windows when they get broken or by vandalism at night. They fix walls. So if you think about the amount of work that has to be done just by that one modality, and the fact that we only have 2 people on staff right now, it is absolutely impossible to do all the work even just for one building, right? Like Cross, let alone 42 buildings, right? So if you take a school like Cross and you've got all the fire doors that haven't been serviced or replaced in many years, you've got locks that are broken on classroom doors or other kinds of doors. You've got vandalism inside the bathrooms. You've got stair treads. You've got floor tiles. You've got ceiling tiles. It's enough work in that one building by itself for more than 2 carpenters right now for the next year. We're using 2 carpenters for the whole district right now. And so, the math is just not there, right? You don't have the internal support that we need. And we do try to supplement with contracts. But we all know that right now, our capital budget is very, very minimal, and our operating budget got slashed by 10%, right? So on both ends, whether it's just supplementing by contracts and using outside service, or whether it's the inside that we're using, and now we have additional costs having to do with associated with abuse and molestation insurance, which is increasing our costs for labor now. It's just we're moving in the wrong direction, and it's impossible for us to keep up at this pace with the resources that we have, especially if we have positions that have been available for us to be able to utilize, but they cannot be funded because of a deficit. And so it's just impossible at this point.
So I do think that what needs to come out of this is, it sounds like twofold. One is on the staffing piece, and maybe the model could be the staffing guidelines report, like I said, March 2023, and then updated in March 2024, because that also put it in terms of, like, I think, for instance, they looked like for social workers, what should a caseload for a social worker be? And then did the math on that so that they were able to then say, we have X number of social workers, we really need Y, and here's the gap. And so that sounds like it really connects with, we have 2 plumbers, we really need 10 plumbers. So we need to find 8 plumbers, and that would cost us X number, $100,000. The second piece to it, and then I think the second piece is also, is there anything out there that's objective in terms of, based on industry standards for school districts, if you have X number million square feet, you should spend X number dollars per square foot as a rough indicator as to what the budget should be, so that we could then also be able to take a look that we should spend X number $1 million and we're only able to spend Y. So the gap in the people and then the gap in the other costs, and that doesn't even really get to the delayed maintenance costs, which I know add up because you can only put band-aids on things so long before you get things fail and you end up with mechanical systems that don't last as long as they might. Although in some cases, I think we have mechanical systems that have lasted much longer than they should have just because of inability to have the funds to repair them. Any comments or questions? Okay, Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes. I think, with all this raised and brought up, I think we need a short-term strategy and a plan and a long-term strategy and plan because some things we can't leave unaddressed and or we should not leave unaddressed. And I do hear that uh, we have more work to be done than there is staff allocated and also resources allocated. But I'm curious, not necessarily for an answer now, but how we can actually be tactical on what needs to be done and what would have the biggest or bigger impact on school culture, morale, safety, um, and preventing um, future problems. So, if something's leaking, we want to stop the leak because if we just let it keep going, it'll kind of expand the problem. So I don't have specific solutions as it relates to that. But I do think uh, our, if no one else, our students and teachers probably need from us a strategy, and staff need a strategy for how we can address what's happening. And maybe there's a way where um, some schools receive intensive attention for a period of time, then we move to the next school, then to the next school. I'm not sure. Or we tackle the same type of challenge in multiple schools. I'm not sure. There may be some efficiency around that. I don't know. It's not my field per se. But I do think we should come up with a strategy and where we can hire, let's try to make that higher. Um, and this is another uh, is slightly tangential but related. When there are additional uses to our additional use of our buildings in excess of the school day, we spoke about being able to properly bill for and bill in the cost as it relates to custodial care or security or energy for lights. We probably need something as it relates to wear and tear on the building. Not saying that these additional activities cause wear and tear, but I do think we need to start just building in costs so that we can upkeep our facilities. And maybe that's not an answer, but close to that might be an answer somewhere for what we can do. So, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Allen, I would definitely work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so my request would be that you all get back to us as to when's an appropriate time to have this back on the agenda as a discussion item. In terms of, so I know Ms. DeMayo, I think will be sending out the calendar. So we could, I know there's several big things on there that are facilities related. So if you all could take a look at that and see like when's a reasonable time to have this back, understanding that it could just be back to have continue the discussion so that you're not doing work that isn't meeting the needs, but just please let us know. And if nothing else, we'll bring this back sometime this fall, just because I think it's important because it factors into telling our story when it comes to the state biennial budget or for the city's capital budget. Dr. Negron?
Mr. Wilcox, thank you for the conversation, and Mr. Arlene and Mr. Carter and Dr. Yarborough. It just made me also think about the fact that I think it would be wise to do the same analysis too as it relates to our security officers, just like we're doing with the trades. I mean, just last week, Dr. Y and I started to take a close look and look at bell schedules and to think about, what is the number that it requires to truly, right, be able to have our kids go through metal detectors in the morning in an expedited way, but also in a way that, right, we're ensuring that we're keeping our buildings safe and still make it in time so kids can, begin the day like in a calm manner and not feeling rushed, like they're being late to class. And at the same time, deploy staff to ensure that we had the adequate numbers in our K-8s. And going through that analysis, like, it was definitely an eye opener for me, like getting in the weeds there to know that, right, we only have 54 security guards and clearly not enough. So again, we're trying to be very strategic in terms of people's work days, right, arrivals, and what the day looks like to have the staggered process. But even that, it's very just very tight. But again, I think the more we are open and transparent about speaking about what we do have, what we don't have, and also how we're responding, right? To still try to stretch the limited resources that we do have. So if you don't mind, I think when we do go through that process of adding the trades to our funding gap, I would like to also add the security officers.
I think that's perfectly appropriate. I think there was a line for security on the staffing guidelines report, but I don't know if it's comprehensive enough or if it's, if it's accurate based on new needs, et cetera. So, but, and I think anything that's connected to this, I think it's probably good to talk about, like if Connecticut more equitably funded their schools, then this is the positions that we would need to fill because it shows the gap. And especially when you take a look, and people probably get a little tired of me bringing it up. When you bring up other schools, I always like to pick on Staples High School in Westport, which I understand is a wonderful school. And part of the wonderfulness of it is that they're able to spend more than $25,000 a year per student in that school. And at Wilbur Cross, we're able to spend, I think, just under 19. So, and that's based on the Connecticut Department of Education school report cards. So just some basic objective numbers there that really show the gap. And I just think that as much as anything, it tells the story that New Haven Public School staff do a tremendous amount with less resources than other places. And it's a testament to the hard work that people are putting in. Anything else on this item? So please let me know when we can bring this back. I think this will be an ongoing discussion, particularly because it's not like the budget is allowing for us to fill gaps this year with current funding. The final item on this agenda is the policy 3323, which is our procurement policy. The board updated the policy in 2020. We're updating it again now. I think we've had more than 12, maybe 15 different people in the district, on the board, in the corporation counsel's office and procurement office. We might be approaching 20 people that are providing input. I do have a request that we add to this, and any time that we have this on the agenda, that there's the current draft of the policy so that it's always there so that people can take a look at it and get their comments in to the committee and to Dr. Negron and to Attorney Alexiadis. I know there was district meetings in the last week to talk about this, and I think we're trying to get the concrete comments to Attorney Alexiadis so that we can finalize this draft. And so my question is, am I missing anything in this update? Or did I cover it? And then just as a reminder, we do have a procurement policy in place. It was updated in 2020, the hard work of people like Ms. DeMayo, Dr. Joyner, and some other members on the board. So we're fixing some things. We do have all the stop gaps in place in terms of the city's policies, where things have to go through there, and like in areas like change orders. And there is, I think, probably 10 or 12 different things that are happening in this policy update. It's not just things like change orders, but it's updating a lot of other language. So invite people to take a look at the policy draft, and if they have comments, now would be a great time to get them into the mix so we can finalize this and move this forward. And again, if we could just have the link. It's linked to from the previous F&O meeting, but if it could be linked to from this one as well, just to make it easy for people to find the current draft.
It's extremely hard to find. I tried to look at it or find it in preparation for this meeting, and I couldn't find it. So if a link would be good, or wherever, so that it would be a good help for me to be able to see, what it is.
Okay. So yeah, if we could have that done sometime tomorrow, before end of day tomorrow, just have it linked to right from this agenda where it says policy 3323. Or put it right on the F&O page, put it right out there. We are trying to get everybody's comments so that this is comprehensive. Because like I said, we've had 15 or 20 people working on this. We want to make sure it's done right, but we also want to get it done. Hearing nothing else on that, I'd like a motion to adjourn. Would be wonderful.
Motion to adjourn?
I will second that motion. We shall vote. Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a
Thank you,
good
everyone.